So, I'm writing a novel. Is the show where you join me, Oliver Brackenbury, on the journey of writing my next novel, from first ideas all the way to publication and promotion. In this one-man reality show, I'll share with you my ever-evolving thoughts and feelings on how I write, being a writer, and everything that entails at each stage of the process. I'll also interview special guests, and, when people send them in, I'll answer listener questions. If you're the kind of person who likes to learn how things are made and get to know the people making them, then this is the show for you. I'd like to say a quick thank you to our Patreon supporters who make this show possible. Patrons receive perks like getting to listen to the show a week early, and if you're not one already, you can check out all the other perks and exclusive content over at patreon.com/soimwritinganovel. Today I'm interviewing Kirk A. Johnson, author of The Obanaax and Other Tales of Heroes and Horror. It's a collection of 4 sword and soul short stories: The Obanaax, The Oculus of Key, Cock and Bull, and For Wine and Roast. I greatly enjoyed reading these stories, and so I was delighted when Kirk said yes to my request for an interview. He can really turn a phrase, and before you get to experience that real time hearing him speak, I'm just going to share with you the first paragraph of the introduction to the book. It goes as follows. This is a product of the giants for whom I look up to in awe, like Zeus birthing Athena from his cracked skull. These authors have given me the inspiration to create what I now present before you, my first book, and I'm proud to say under my own Far Afield Press logo, with me sweating great streams of salty water. I hope you, the reader, will love what I present before your eyes. That grabbed my attention. Didn't it grab yours? Now to meet the man who wrote those words, and who then went on to, much later, have a great conversation with me about all kinds of things, discussing how afternoon movies with his dad shaped his view of a hero, his approach to gore and violence in fiction, which blaxploitation film is the most Shakespearean, and a whole lot more. Keep talking, because I'll keep going. All right, and here we are with Kirk. Hi, Kirk.
Hey, what's up, man? Good morning to you. Yeah.
Listener, this has definitely been one of those interviews where I was like, we'll warm up for 5 minutes, and like 35 minutes later I was like, I should be hitting record. So I hope you'll enjoy the energy we're bringing to this. Okay, without further ado, Kirk, let's get into the shallow end of the pool first.
Okay.
Why sword and sorcery? What draws you to it as a reader and as a writer?
All right. In the year of our Lord, 1985. I'm lying. I don't know what year it was. Me and my dad used to sit and watch the old sword and sandal movies from back in the day. And, he'd even like me cooking lunch for the family and stuff, or he'd be doing, other parent duty stuff, but he'd still find time to sit with me and watch these and tell me all about how, he would watch Hercules and Hercules Unchained. And, there's always that element of the hero doing things to protect his family or doing things to protect the one he loved, the woman he loves. The very masculine pursuits, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. But the wonder of these heroes doing these things and the monsters they had to deal with, like Jacobson and Argonauts was the epitome of that shit for me. It put something in me. You know what I mean? I was totally drawn into that. And the Conan Barbarian Marvel comic runs and the Savage Sword of Conan. So I really kind of started really with the comics and the television, the movies that come on TV at the time. And this is in the 80s, the mid to late 80s. And it spoke to me about this idea of honor and sacrifice and doing things that you don't want to do, but, you have that strength and the will to do it. Mm-hmm. And the idea of the right reasons, not, the knowing what morality is, knowing what is bad and what is good, understanding it's not about you. It's about the people you love. Mm-hmm. You people you live with, right? I remember in Hercules Unchained, he wanted to save his city of Thebes. And I'm like, well, shit. I mean, excuse me, but right. You ain't know them. You just literally stepped in talking about your city of Thebes and, and how important it was to you. And it clicked on me that it was about the people. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about the woman he was with that she got kidnapped or old friends. I mean, the two kings were fighting each other and he knew them, but it still came down to the people and saving the people, making that sacrifice. Yeah. And I guess in terms of literature, it really moved me to, I saw a copy of Frank Frazetta cover of Conan the Conqueror.
Of course.
and I devoured it, and I needed more. And it was just that other element the other element I want to say also, and I want to be honest about, growing up Black in the Bronx and being told to be careful, don't do this. No, pretty much I always felt like I had, for lack of a better term, a shackle. Like I always had to be proper. I had to be respectful, be proper, even the people who were not to me. So I'd get bullied, or I'd get punched, or I'd get yelled at, and and I had this anger about that like, come on, can I just say something? You're doing wrong, but I can't. I gotta, hold, because if you don't do this, then you get hemmed up by the police, or you get hemmed up by the authorities, or whoever is the person in charge. And Conan didn't do that. Hercules didn't do that.
Yeah.
If somebody was in the wrong and they try to put it on you, or they made you feel small about it, you let them know. And I think as a teenage boy, that resonated. And I want to compare that to the Kung Fu movies that used to come on back in the day. Why martial arts was such a big thing in the Black community was that idea of this person not just staying quiet and not doing anything when they're being posed with injustice or being bullied and things of that nature. I mean, that's literally, there was a point in the 80s when Channel 5 had this thing called drive-in movies, and it came on at 3:00, and everybody in the neighborhood would run home and check that out. You was out there playing whatever game you was playing. You'd stop 3:00. We go check it out. And you have to understand that was a thing. So I want to say that that's, one of the things about it that drew me to Sword and Sorcery.
I like that. Yeah. Like, I mean, of course, in any broad canon, you'll find exceptions to broad statements. But generally speaking, one thing I love about Sword and Sorcery protagonists is they don't really punch down. They're rarely fighting for the king. They're usually fighting against the king, or to protect the people from the side effects of what the king's up to.
Yes.
Or they're robbing from the king.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
They're the outsider who, the Robin, I don't want to say Robin Hood, but they're like the Robin Hood.
Well, actually, I just saw someone today arguing Robin Hood could be sword and sorcery. I mean, there's no sorcery in the stories, but you just tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you'd say sort of I want to say Robin Hood, but the Robin Hoods that we always saw are still he's still a lord who ran off on his own.
Oh, that's true. God, I forgot that part.
He was still part of the establishment that ran off to do something, as opposed to Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser.
Yeah.
Right. And I gravitated towards them and Conan characters because they weren't born in privilege. Right. But they wanted to live free and live in a comfort of being who they are. They dreamt of the money, and they dreamt of the women, and they dreamt of all these things. But, they would have found themselves very at home in The Wire. I'm just saying.
Well, no, it's funny. It's funny you say that. Kind of poor James Caan just recently perished, and it got me talking about my favorite movie of his, Thief, which you could see as being kind of adjacent to some of the stuff going on in The Wire. But I just was thinking, I was like, man, I don't know if it would quite work, because Thief is a very anti-capitalist movie, and there's no capitalism as we understand it. Anyways, it's expressed in that film and a lot of the old Sword and Sorcery stories. But God, I would watch the hell out of a Sword and Sorcery story that was basically Thief, And I wonder, if you kind of bring those crime noir, hard-boiled kind of characters back, which makes sense, because I mean they all come out of the same tradition from the 30s,
Exactly. The cowboy, the noir films, that whole idea of the, little guy just sticking it to the man.
Yeah, which makes sense if you go back to the Depression, where people were, for some reason, not fond of bankers or presidents and CEOs and so on.
Oh, the cattle lords and
it's like there's some kind of world event that I don't know. Anyways, there's definitely no parallels to today or anything that's been happening since 2008. But yeah. No, it's funny. We a lot of people in Sword and Sorcery communities have these conversations. We were talking about this before we hit record about, are we ready for a third wave? We had that second wave in the 60s, 70s, kind of early 80s.
Yes.
Is it time for a third wave? And I'm like, man, there's a lot of parallels between now and the 30s. I mean, I would definitely trade Sword and Sorcery to have a better world, but I guess it's cool. We're in this new Gilded Age Depression era or whatever. I guess we'll get some third wave of Sword and Sorcery at least.
At least you're looking for it. I think they're out there. It's just, it's not being afraid to deal with that part of the nature of where we live, right? Because I've heard cats talk about, they just want to write a story. They don't want to be political.
Oh,
and
Jesus.
I'm always under the impression that, you as a person live within the time. And even as a writer, it's nothing wrong with allowing that part of you to get on the page.
Yeah.
I mean, when I wrote the stories, I had the idea, it's an entertainment. I'm going to do it for entertainment, but I'm not going to not allow my idea of the world or my idea of heroism, which is also part of the politics of the world we live in, not show in my stories. One of the characters is literally a hustler.
Yeah. I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah. He's a smuggler. He deals with bad people. Right? He's not particularly a bad person, but that's the situation of the life that he's in.
Mm-hmm.
And the redemption or what he's looking for goes in there, for a lot of the characters. Don't be afraid to, I guess, allow your sense of the world to be a part of your storytelling.
Well, I would say especially because no matter what you do, it's going to come through somehow, right? Everything is a choice. Everything you put on the page, everything you don't put on the page is a choice. What are the choices informed by? Who you are? What are you? A collection of thoughts, beliefs, opinions. What is politics? A collection of thoughts, beliefs, opinions.
Exactly, yeah.
So you might as well be conscious about it and try and produce something more meaningful and coherent than to just kind of be like, oh, yeah, there's no choices here. It's just a guy stabbing a giant snake. And it's like, yeah, why is it a guy stabbing a giant snake?
Giant snake, right. Who's the giant snake?
Yeah. Like, without even getting to amusing myself with Freudian stuff about the giant snake, it's just this kind of thing of you're choosing to show a guy stabbing the giant snake. You are choosing not to show, say, more of, other parts of the world. Like, you can't have the camera, so to speak, showing everything. And so, to my feeling is, it's when people say, I don't want politics in my stories, they usually mean one of two things. Either mean I don't want anything that challenges me, which I have no time for, or they mean, and this I have a little more patience for, I don't want a character turning to the camera and being like, these are my thoughts on, I don't know, socialism or bike lanes. Doesn't matter. That's just kind of sloppy writing. It's like, okay, well, yeah, making the subtext really egregious text. You can make subtext text, but when it's really bad. But then that's just bad writing. That's the problem, Or you want to break from, being made to think about Brexit or whatever. Yeah, okay, cool. I don't read a story where Trump is mentioned every other page or something. That I get. I get being exhausted with current affairs. I don't get the no politics in my stories thing. It doesn't work.
It does no. Yeah, that. Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, there's be brave about it. I mean, and be creative about it. You can literally have a king who decided to build a wall on his western borders, and that's why everybody's being overtaxed, and that's why you have these mercenary characters in your town as police squad.
And then boil all down to the hero of the story who is getting oppressed by those guards, right? Who are all just motivated by pay instead of morality because the way the world works. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And decides to rob them of their stuff because that's how they're getting paid through your taxes.
Exactly. So, if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think your first short story sale was your story in Milton Davis's, I'm going to mispronounce this, I've only read it, Griot?
Yes.
Yeah, Griot anthology. Was that
this
where
Brackenberry? This is Brackenberry. Nice. You dropped the T on that. I like that. It's good for you. Good for you.
Well, I'm doing what I can. But yeah, was that where your creative writing started, or is it a longer journey?
It was a longer journey. I'll say that. I want to say maybe in 2005. After a really big pause, after how I want to say elementary school, got into high school, became a teenager, discovered the wonders of women and and teenage boy stuff. It was in college, and I remember I discovered Dale Ripke. I want to say, make sure I get that right. Heroes of Dark Fantasy. And it was a DodgeNet site, I remember, if I remember correctly. And he had a chronology of Conan and Kane and Imaro. And I never even heard of Imaro. I had no idea this even existed. So when I saw that, I was like, whoa, what is this? Went searching for the books online. I found the books. I read the first one and kept reading, read the trilogy and everything. And it kind of like, I'm one of those cats that's kind of like, I'm not aware of the accessibility of a thing until I see someone else who looks like me doing it.
Yeah.
Be honest about it. So I didn't even realize that I could actually be a writer of this genre that I was into when I was a child and rediscovered now as an adult. So I started playing with it and writing it and exploring the idea of creating my own world and creating these action adventure tales with swords and demons and cults and the whole shebang. And it helped that I was already like a history head and I was already like a sword nut.
Yeah.
Like
the ingredients were there.
Swords,
they just had to be activated.
Right. Exactly. The elixir of creativity, the catalyst for the creativity. So Griots, and discovering all that, I was online and doing the writing, and I shared what I was writing with other people. I actually got a rejection. I can't remember the first story. I think the first story was In the Wake of Mist that I submitted to an online magazine, and they rejected it. And they gave me some good pointers and hints in terms of just writing.
Yeah.
Right. Cause I was working it as like, I was doing like a website. So I had different fonts in my manuscript.
Oh, awesome.
I didn't know the proper, format and everything.
Yeah.
And they gave me some, I can't remember. I wish I remember who they were, but they gave me some really great pointers on what to do and not to do.
Well, it's funny how that goes. I mean, I guess once you've been through it a few times, it sounds obvious, but you meet a lot of people who want to write, or they've only done like one or two stories, and it's like rejection sucks, no doubt, but it can be formative, really formative, especially if you get like a proper editor's notes. I still have a bunch saved that just, I'm like, oh, this is a good reference, or a good track record of how I've evolved.
Bruh, I so appreciate when submission sites do that.
Yeah.
When they give you a heads up of, hey, this is what's wrong with it, or this is why we didn't accept it, as opposed to it's not right for us or good luck next time.
Yeah, please keep submitting. It's like, well, yeah, it costs you nothing for me to keep submitting.
Right.
It's like, it's not the big, gesture you think it is.
Right. Like the price is literally my confidence to do this. Slowly eroded, but I'll try. But yeah, Griots was the first accepted, I should say, submission of a work I put out. So
yeah, and so that anthology came out in 2011. Going by what I've read, in the Obanaax, you've certainly been working on your craft since then.
Yes.
How would you say, no false modesty allowed, I got an air horn, I'll press it.
Okay.
How would you say, I don't have an air horn, don't worry. How would you say your writing has improved, in that decade or so? What are you proudest of? And like, what's been a real challenge?
I always call it the craft. I want to say it's having the balance of everything involved. The being able to tell enough without it being an info dump and having it mold seamlessly into the story. The pacing, which I want to say that, I'm still working on. But I want to say the fight scenes, I'm most proud of the fight scenes and the embellishment of the horror aspect of it.
Well, that's a perfect answer, if only because it segues right into my next question. So it's a perfect answer for how it gratifies me as an interviewer. That's what's important to me.
Okay.
But
it's
hey,
all about you.
It's my show. No, but it does though. It does work. It does work because check this out. What I was going to ask you next. In the second story, the Oculus of Key.
Yes.
There was a glorious part where, I'm not going to be too spoiler here, but just broadly speaking, there was a glorious part where a monster picks up its human followers, still living at the time, to use them as clubs. And to be clear, I loved this. However, I thought it was noteworthy as an example of a kind of almost gonzo, like fun B-movie level of gore and violence that you don't encounter in every sword and sorcery story, not even every one of your stories. But that really stood out to me there. So yeah, what is your attitude towards like violence and its role in your stories and how to convey it?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. We write sword and sorcery, in my head, at least for me and in my interpretation. Sword and sorcery always takes place in a faraway time where the violence is present, right? Especially for the characters, where the characters are coming from, violence is present, and the monstrosities that they encounter don't have hangups about violence. Right. And to add to the horror and the disturbing nature of what these monstrosities are, I do believe the violence should be very grotesque and, ooh.
Yeah.
I don't want to be afraid of that. It's kind of like, this is the dilemma you're dealing with. This is the thing you're dealing with. I think it adds to the conflict and the intensity of the situation our protagonists and heroes have to deal with. And I grew up watching these really horrifying horror movies.
Well, yeah, when you were talking about the 3 p.m., I thought maybe the movies earlier, I was like thinking, oh, maybe this is where some of the,
like
the DNA fed in.
The old Kung Fu movies, and I want to say the Argento horror flicks.
Yep.
And the cannibal stuff. And, and the funny thing is, this is the funny thing. I am not particularly into gore like that. I'm not into gore, but I have to admit that I do have a weird kind of, like an interesting fascination with it and how it's used and how far you want to go with it.
Yeah.
Like the limitations of it. And I do believe there are limitations to it. They must definitely have to be limitations to it. Because if not, you'll write some really horrifying stuff that you yourself would be like, this is not me. This is not who I want these characters to be. This is not what I want my story to be. So, I keep that in mind when I'm writing my stuff. Yeah,
I mean, you can either get darker or say something you don't want to say, or alternately, it can just become bland, right? Because it's just wall to wall blood,
right.
You
don't want to overdo it. You want to just the balance. There has to be a balance.
Yeah. Well, right. No pressure. I'll never check up on you on this, but I remember you very kindly told me before we scheduled this even that you picked up my first book, Junkyard Leopard, and you kind of made me think of it because that absolutely was like, I'm going to have some gore in this thing. Right. It's going to have some violence in this thing. This is a book where violence is key, but I was trying to think about it really hard, like kind of everything you just said. I really agree with, in terms of it's a technique, and you got to think about how it's applied. And I felt like your use of it was thoughtful. And sometimes it's like, yeah, you want this big crazy madness for a second because it's a mad scene. You know what's going on when that monster is happening. But you don't have that kind of thing on every page or every fight scene,
Right, yeah.
I got the feeling it was kind of like, okay, well, this is a big, wild scene. Let's have something big and wild happen. Yeah.
Right. You want to stay Mondo. You want to, there's, what do you call it? Back in the city, in New York City, there was this place in the 90s called Kim's Video. And they had a section called Mondo Video.
Yeah, I'm familiar, not with Kim's, but I've encountered Mondo in other places. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I grew up with that kind of like off the wall, crazy madness that goes on. I want to say that helped a little bit with me understanding my limitations. Right. How far do I want to go?
Yeah.
And being always aware of that.
Yeah, it's funny how that goes. I've happily done terrible things to humans in my stories, but I remember reading a horror tale that I will not be mean in name, but I was reading a horror tale where it was like there was a serial killer character, and the author was like, I'm going to show you how nasty the serial killer was as a kid. And then it was like a really detailed scene about him murdering a cat. And I was like, fuck this. And I just, sorry to me. I tried not to the podcast, but you know what? That's how strongly I felt. I was like, fuck this. And I just like threw the book over across the room. I was like, I don't need to read that.
Right. No, absolutely. Bro.
You could tell me what happened, and I'd be like, "Oh, okay, that's where it started." But you don't need to give me like the anatomical detail of murdering a cat. Like, my God.
Bro, I got a list of books that I will not touch. like literally, like list of books and movies. Like, there's two movies like off the top is I will not watch Salo, 120 Days of Salo. I will not. I will not. And the Serbian film. I will not.
Yeah.
I will not. And I will not read Hog by Samuel Delany. I will not.
Oh, yeah. I've heard. I haven't read it.
I will. Nope. I read it I read the summary of it. So like what goes on. And I'm like, yeah, that's my limit.
Know your limits and know your interests. Like I unlike that book with the cat, I have no problem with the Saw movies, but I don't want to watch them, even though I'm very happy to do things that probably, from what I understand, are on par with things that happen in those movies in my work, because I'm there. It's like it's a tool I'm using to try and say something, and it's funny how that can go. You can kind of like get into using something more than you are into consuming something. Which is, I think, an interesting. I don't know. So I thought about it right there. Anyway, I'm so smart. Next question. This is going to sound strange, but as I worked my way through the first story, I was delighted to see a character fart. I'm putting on record, I'm not a coprophiliac, and no, it does not sound more suspicious the more I say I'm not. Thank you. What it is I see sword and sorcery very much as a genre where the body is key. You know, generally, you know, this manifests in story elements related to sex or violence. But when that's all there is, I feel you're not getting the complete picture. So I like that at certain points, you know, listener, I don't want to give you the impression this is the big book of sword and sorcery farts. Kirk's written here. It's not, but that's the sequel, maybe. But at certain points.
From the ass. From the ass.
Oh, God. But at certain points, characters fart, belch, wet themselves in fear in one memorably frightening part. They're grounded, is how I see it. They're grounded by the less sexy or viscerally violent sides of having a body. And so I'm asking you, Kirk, you know, was this a conscious choice or was it more subconscious, like, this is just how people are, how else would I write it, you know, kind of thing?
I want to say subconscious, really. It's, you know, I wrote it kind of like, you know, I've worked blue collar gigs. Me and the guys, I work with electricians in film and theater.
Oh, yeah.
So we're hanging out with a bunch of guys. We got our tool belts on, and usually on off chance, we're just sitting there farting and telling bad jokes and just being regular, just being really open and loose with each other. And that's how I thought of the way people just become very comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Working with these people for so long, you know, the characters in the book, they've been with each other for so long that, you know, somebody letting out a fart or talking about whatever is just a common thing. I didn't want to limit that. I wanted to at least make these people. I didn't want to make them caricatures.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a common thing that people, whether or not they word it quite this way, but that they like about sword and sorcery is that it is a more grounded, you know, kind of genre.
Yeah.
And what's more grounding?
I'm just saying, man. People traveling. You traveling with a bunch of hobbits for how long? And you gonna tell me nobody had food. Right? Like nobody just lets a little one out.
You know? Yeah, but and it's not
like Merry and Pippin should be farting the entire time.
Well, yeah, and you know, and hey, have you seen The Northman?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that scene with the boy. Yeah, so you know, and it's not like it's the whole movie. It's not like it's every scene.
No,
it's just this one little part, and again, it serves a purpose. Yeah. You know, and all these are ground things, but and have a little bit of, you know, light comedy, sure, but like I don't want to spoil it, but just, you know, listener, trust me, if you haven't seen it. In the scene, it's more than just like, oh, a guy farts and people laugh. Like it's kind of actually an interesting twist on what's going on in the scene. So, you know, it's just like another tool in the toolbox. It doesn't need to be like all the other tools. It does not need to be applied constantly. But I found it kind of gratifying. I was like, oh, this is nice, you know, because like I said, to me, it's really a genre of the body. And I was like, this is part of the body. It can't just be, you know, big muscles and stuff or whatever, you know?
So, I mean, you know, like you said, not to spoil, but you know, there's a point where cats haven't been taking a bath or a shower for a long time. They're gonna smell.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that guy.
like one reviewer actually mentioned he enjoyed the fact that I put swamp ass in a sort of sorcery. And I'm like, oh yeah. And that was like a thing. That was conscious. I ain't gonna front. That was like, nah, this dude's gonna be he ain't gonna be smelling pretty. And you notice when somebody is smelling a little off. You can't
there you go. And again, with handing me the great transitions, thank you.
Oh,
because you know, next question. There were some turns of phrase in this book that I enjoyed the book, but I'm just saying that there were some phrases in particular that stand out. That, you know, that I really enjoyed. For example, on page 99, you know, there's a line that reads, "His voice was both heavy and sweet, as of someone ready to sell you a secret." You know, I like that.
Right.
What is your attitude toward when it's time to deploy more eloquent, even purple prose? And when do you prefer to be more concise, more straightforward, or more colloquial, like Swamp Ass, you know, in how you relate your story to the reader? You know, how do you modulate your tone, I guess, kind of thing. Like, how do you choose?
The context of the scene. You know, what is the scene trying to tell you? What does the scene call for? What am I trying to say with the scene, right? Am I talking about the camaraderie between characters? Is it time for the information? Is it time for the action? I think about those and how I'm still working, to be honest, as a newbie. I am a newbie still. I'm still learning. So I'm still trying to consciously understand when I'm do things. And then sometimes I kind of just write because it sounded like this is right for this moment. Because usually when I'm writing, I'm just, all right, yeah, this is something you'd say in this moment. This is something that would go on in this moment. This is what this character would say, not say.
Like the tone of the scene come in, you know, like having more of a funny scene, so we're going to say Swamp Ass, but we're having a more serious, like intimate scene, so we're going to have the line I wrote.
Yeah, so, you know, I at least allow myself to not think and just do what I know to do. And sometimes it happens that way.
One thing I really liked in reading this was that it was very much, I could tell, like, this is the author's voice. because which sounds obvious, right? But like I think you seem like a big enough fan for sure that you would have read some stuff where like the author is very plainly trying to do their best impersonation of Howard, or they're trying to do their best impersonation of like Clark Ashton Smith. It's like super ornate, and we all got to start somewhere, and sometimes elements of people we love do sort of organically kind of like get threaded into our voice.
Yes.
For me, a big one was when I was younger, I would read a bunch of Hunter S. Thompson, and then guess what my writing sounded like for the next like week.
Yes.
And it's a fun voice. It's a fun voice, but it's his voice, not mine, right?
Exactly.
But that's where you start. So I'm wondering, were there any, the wrong answer is obviously if it's Howard, but were there any voices like was Saunders, was his voice, something that you kind of felt like you were riffing on when you were earlier in your writing and trying to find your voice?
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. I ain't gonna front, in the Wake of Mist that was in the Griots, that was me riffing on Saunders and Robert E. Howard. I ain't gonna front. Their words were in my head, and that's when I was writing that's kind of what came out. As the years have gone by, I have been able to develop my own voice. And I want to say develop it in a way that, aside from reading other genres and finding other authors that I enjoy reading, I made a conscious decision not to shy away from my environment where I grew up. So there'd be certain words in there that seem out of how, would they say that in that time? And like, yeah, because it's my time, it's my world, and they'd say that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to at least embrace that part of the world I grew up in. Like, I knew cats. If you look at them now, they would just seem like some thugs on the corner.
Yeah.
But, I knew them as my friends.
Yeah.
Right? I actually, like, two of the characters in Cock and Bull, the main characters were based off of two dudes I used to hang out with back in the day. Who were really, like, they were, like, real gully, and they look really gully thug-like. But when you hang out with them, they weren't those cats at all. They were actually they were nerd dudes just like me. They just look like they can really, go into a brawl and get ready for it. But they were just really cool, funny dudes that I used to hang out with. And not being afraid to use slang or turn slang a little bit for your own benefit and create a new slang term. You know what I mean? I embraced it, and I want to do that more.
Oh, I liked it, man. And like I said, it's a big part of how I could tell, like, other the author talking, this is really them.
Yeah.
But you got to start somewhere, right? And then how cool was it that you were riffing off back in Griot off of Saunders in part, and then you were in an anthology with Saunders?
Yeah. Oh man, that was so. It hurts that he passed away so soon.
Yeah.
And I've been wanting to try to find a way to talk to him, to just, just to talk to him, actually, not even to get anything from him, just to have a conversation. Cause, there's so few sword and sorcery writers, period. And Black sword and sorcery authors are even further apart.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that early time, luckily Milton Davis had an opportunity to talk to him and really have a good working relationship with him and everything. And that was great. But yeah, that was a big milestone. I'll say that. That was a big moment. It was like, oh, cool, I'm here with him. And, now I got to be honest, now I'm on to a different thing where I'm like, I want to be in this book with this person. All right. Like recently, I'll be honest,
Sure.
Laird Barron, who writes Cosmic Horror, and he's doing noir now, but his stuff is phenomenal. For me, he's like hands down the go-to author. And to have him tweet my book was like a moment for me. That was a moment for me.
Oh, man, that was so nice. And actually, coming back to Saunders again, as Saunders had the, if I remember correctly, the Messiah in mind when designing the Illicai of his Imaro stories.
Yeah.
Did you have any specific cultures in mind when populating the world of your stories in this book? And if so, what drew you to them?
You ready? You ready for this? This is going to be a big one. This is long. All right. So when I started, I took the template of Saunders and Robert E. Howard in creating the world. And the first idea I had to work off of is Africa is a continent, not a country.
Yep.
I always like reiterating that. So of all the language groups and cultures and nations that are on this continent, I perfectly said, you know what? I'm taking West Africa and the Sahel region, and I'm going to put them on a planet, and I'm going to put them on a continent on their own. And I'm going to use some of the language, some of the proper nouns and nouns of those different languages and mix them into the stories. And I made 2 continents. So there's that one, and then there's another one, Gabar, which is also, I want to say, Middle Eastern and Central Asian and Korean, and using those language groups to filter and be a part of that world as well. And that's what I thought of. So I have the Mandan or the Mandinka. I mixed and matched and played with it because I realized, you know, it's an imaginary world. You can do as you like.
Yep.
And you can play with the ideas of culture admixture, of societies sharing and borrowing words together, culture exchange through trade and mercantile endeavors. Play with that whole thing and see what I can come up with.
So I knew some of this, but I want to ask because you kind of cover some backstory for the book in the book, but I wanted listeners to hear and then get excited to go buy the book, right? So listeners, buy this book. And I'll just say also listeners, for those of you who dig this kind of thing and are really into the language side, there is a glossary in the back of the book of some of the words that are used throughout. But the fun thing is, reading the book, I thought Kirk did a great job providing the context. So I never felt the need to go to the glossary to be like, what the hell is this? It was just like, oh, okay, I can figure out roughly what this is from the context. Right. And then when I got to the back, it was like, oh, cool, okay, I can read this and kind of confirm and just read it. You know, yeah, it was. Right. It was. I thought a good use of. You know, putting in language that most readers probably are familiar with. I thought it was deftly handled because I do not like a book that has an appendix I have to consult chapter by chapter to understand.
Right. I'm always on the impression that when you add a new word to the lexicon of the story, and even though you might not be familiar with the word, or it might be a made-up word altogether, the context of how it's used should give you an idea of what it is.
Yeah, instead of just like a list of words, and you're like, okay.
Right. Yeah, it has to make sense in the story, right? It has to be part of the context of the story. You're not going to just toss it in there.
Have you ever read a lot of Jack Vance?
I haven't. The one Jack Vance I read, I think it was Dragon Riders. Was it Dragon Riders?
Oh, was that the one with it was kind of sci-fi where humans were breeding a lizard alien that was trying to conquer them, and they were like, "What? We'll capture some of you guys, breed you into giants, essentially dragons, and then we'll ride you around." Yeah, I have that one. I love it.
Yes. Yeah. I read that's. I think the only Jack Vance I've had.
Okay. Because that one I don't think he does it as much, although he always across all his work does it to some degree. But boy, you know, in the Diner series, I'm sure you've heard of it. Boy, does he have fun making up language, and he does not hold your hand, but you can kind of be like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I know what this means. All right, cool.
Right. They did like a Clockwork Orange.
yeah. There you go.
Right.
So how long was your journey from first ideas through to publication of the Obanaax, and what was that like?
It was pretty long because the Obanaax, all 4 of those stories I wrote to submit into magazines and stuff. I had an idea. I said, let me start this way in terms of a plan. I'm going to write short stories and submit them so that my name becomes familiar with readers and editors and so on and so forth. And then I'll have a book out. Then I'll do a book. You know, and through the journey, being frustrated by, you know, submissions being rejected and not having reason why it was rejected, that kind of the grate on me a lot. And there was a point where, you know, I had other friends who were independently publishing and friends who were published through traditional media, through traditional ways. And during the pandemic, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to compile a book and do it independently. So I took the stories that I knew that I enjoyed and that were the best in terms of what my idea of sword and sorcery was, and I put them in the book. So I've been writing those and reworking them and rewriting them for a couple of years now, I want to say.
Which was the first story that you started, like, you know, having the ideas for? Like, what was the absolute, do you remember the absolute beginning? Like, which story you first thought of or first started, you know, outlining?
Well, for the book?
Yeah.
Funny enough, it was none of these stories in the book. It was one called Carnivora.
Okay.
I have a short story called Carnivora, and, you know, I'm going to tell you what, because you'll probably see it soon enough. Carnivora, it is Spear and Fang. I don't know who coined that phrase. So think of the fantasy world I created, and I thought of it in the pre-Bronze Age time.
Right.
So it's not cavemen. So it's between the idea of cavemen and Bronze Age.
Yeah, like there's agriculture, but yeah.
Right. So people are still creating clothes, agriculture, stone tools still. And a raiding party captures a runaway slave, and the runaway slave turns out to be a warrior witch who is consolidating power. And I had like cosmic horror in there and everything. And that was the first one I was going to put in. But I realized that there is no traditional hero character. This is more of a horror.
Yeah.
And a weird kind of pre-medieval horror that I don't know where else I would even be able to submit it to. So I kind of like just put it on the side, and then I looked at the Obanaax. And the Obanaax was the first one. Was like, you know what, this is the one actually that has the elements that I look for in Sword and Sorcery. So it was Carnivore first, and then I was like, you know what, that's not going to do. That'll have to be something else.
Oh, that's cool. We should talk about markets afterwards, because I think I know some people who might have some ideas, because I want to read Carnivore.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
That sounds good, man. It's interesting.
Thank you.
Have you watched that animated series Primal yet?
I have. And I dig it. I dig it a lot. I like the elements they add to it, but I miss the human to human interaction.
Yeah.
The only thing I really didn't really dig too much about Primal is that he doesn't really have other societies and people to kind of, he's with this one dinosaur, and their friendship is nice, but I kind of like you can't not do almost everything without a giant dinosaur. So the suspense is the suspense has to be ramped up with the violence and the action, right?
Yeah, it's like the limits that create the stories maybe, have their limitations, so to speak. Yeah, and I get what you're saying. So you self-published, and everybody has kind of their own experience with this. How have you found the process so far? You're I would say it's fair to say you're still in promotion. I mean, here you are.
Yeah.
But yeah, like just the technical side, they're trying to get like, how do you do things? Because I feel there's a lot of help and advice online, and a lot of people with varying takes on like what self-publishing is like. What has your experience been so far?
I've had a very good experience with I chose when I was trying to look for places to actually do the print and formatting and everything. I talked to friends who've also self-published, Stephen Van Patten and Mark Abbott, who are friends of mine with another web podcast we do, Beef, Wine, and Shenanigans. And we also have like a horror novel out. I talked to them about self-publishing because they've done it, and chose BookBaby. And it's been I've had a really easygoing time of it, to be honest. I'm not sweating it a lot. It's kind of like, hey, I just read the book. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just want you to read the book. So I don't really worry too much about a lot of the business aspect of it. You just kind of do it.
I've never heard of BookBaby, by the way. I only tripped over it when I was looking at your stuff online. What can you tell our listeners what that is? Yeah,
it's a publishing service. I started with using the money from the pandemic relief and set up a business with Zen Business. So got my LLC, got the business cards, got my logo, and looking for a place. I have the books set up. I have the stories that I want to use, and looking for a publishing service because I can't print these books on my own. I don't have the facility or the infrastructure for that. And I saw BookBaby on Facebook. They were advertising. So I did a little research on them and found out that, I get most of the profits in the book sales.
Is it a more appetizing cut than Amazon? Because I'm guessing you had a peek at that. Everybody does usually self-publishing.
Yeah. Actually, like as you said earlier, when you go online and you do the comparisons online, and you have people who will tell you this is the pros and cons of dealing with Amazon Kindle. These are the pros and cons of dealing with BookBaby. These are the pros and cons with Smashwords and Spark. I think Spark and Smashwords, I think, are now the same thing. And I got a pamphlet from them, a little advertising pamphlet, and I liked what I saw. I'll be honest. I like what I saw, and I like the ease of their interface when I went online.
Okay.
So you go online and you'll see that, they'll have like a list of different services they'll have, how much the services will charge you. If you created your own cover, you can put your own cover in and they'll format the text on front cover and the back cover. They'll do all that. And, you get the rates, and it's that straightforward. That's what I liked about it. It's very straightforward. I didn't have to search and navigate through their web to see how much it's going to cost me.
Yeah. Cool.
It's right there.
All right. Well, I'll link to them in the show notes, along with everything else that you mentioned, like that horror book you mentioned and stuff in the podcast. Yeah. And how have you found promoting your book? Because I think that's a very difficult thing for people to do when it's just themselves. It's definitely one of the parts where I start to roll my eyes real hard when people are like, oh, with self-publishing, you can do everything. And as I have definitely said on the show before, just change the tone of voice there. You do everything. Like, you know.
Right. Right. You realize, I realized this before I went into this game, to independent publishing, is, the thing that the established markets have is infrastructure. Mm-hmm. They have the promotional department. You have the book printer department, the designer department. Editorial. You have all these different editorial department. You have all these different departments that you're going to be in charge of, that it's all on you. And you don't have a staff of people to work these things out as you're trying to do other things. You don't.
Yeah, like I almost want to turn around to some people that are really who haven't done it but are very enthusiastic about it, and just be like, there's a reason Random House Penguin, whatever the hell it is now, is not just one guy.
Exactly.
That's a good reason.
There's
not just one guy.
So, and so it's good to just go, when you go in, just don't go in blind, really. You know what I mean? Yeah. And promotional wise, I understood that I'm a new author. I have personally a thing with asking for help. And asking people for help and asking people to do this with me or do this for me or, hey, I have a problem with that. I'm not comfortable doing that. Mm-hmm. And that's a personal thing. That's me growing up in trauma and the whole shebang, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So when I looked at the idea of promotion, I just said, all right, I'm not looking to make money for this. I'm just looking to have my name being recognized. Mm-hmm. Just know my name. If you like the stories or you don't like the stories, I'm fine with that. Just know my name. You know the book.
Yeah, get stuff out there.
And try not to psych myself out in the idea of promotion, right?
Yeah.
Because some people, do it, they'll get discouraged and be like, give up. And they'll have like a box of books in their house because they just gave up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I went with the idea first of just remembering what I've always heard about businesses and new startups is that you will not make money in your first couple of years. You're not. I'm fine with that. I'm going to promote on my own. Probably spend money. I'm fine with that. As long as my name is at least recognized with the idea of sword and sorcery, sword and soul, and heroic fantasy and those kind of writings. And if it helps with promoting the genre, then that's what it's going to do.
Yeah.
And the fatalistic part of me being, I'm probably going to be dead before this even becomes a really big thing. So let's be all right with that. I'm all right with that. Well, it's the next generation that has to do it.
Well, fingers crossed, it doesn't come to that. But I get with you about accepting, this is not guaranteed to go to the stars. But it's the whole thing about it's the journey, not the destination, And
right.
It sounds like you feel. I think it sounds to me like you feel like you're getting something out of it, right? You're getting something that you're going for that you wanted out of it. So
this
kind of point, right?
This is the thing. This is this genre, sword and sorcery, genre fiction. I let go of it in my teen years and rediscovering it, realizing that this is what I want to feel this is a part of me that has been missing from my life, from me growing up. I've done things that I've always questioned and wondered if this is the right thing to do or should I do this? No, this was what it is that gave me the fire to keep going, wake up in the morning. Adventure, the action, the wonder of discovering and creating new and dynamic cultures and societies and worlds. This was it.
Yeah.
In this half side of my life, it's 51. I'm like, man, I'm just going to go in on it.
Yeah.
I ain't going to be afraid of this.
Yeah.
This is me and this is what I love. And you roll with that. Cool. You can't. And you do you. But this is how I'm going to do. And I'll be honest, if I'm not making money on it, I'm okay as long as this is a part of the tradition.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is a part of the tradition. This has to be a part of the tradition that I love.
Well, yeah, and forgive me if this sounds corny, but what you were talking about earlier, I was trying to avoid the word because I feel like, especially well-meaning, melanin-deficient individuals tend to throw the word representation around a lot.
Okay.
Like it's the be-all, end-all solution to all problems. It isn't, but it's super important nonetheless.
Right.
And what happened, right? You read Saunders and were like, wait, I could do this?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe, you're contributing to that by creating this new work.
I hope so. I want to be a part of that and everything in the whole, you know what I mean? Dario with his sword and silk, for lack of a better term. I think that's a term. I loved the Four Winds. I want to read more. There's a point where it's like, how many more knights and barbarians you want to deal with. Sometimes you want something different.
Yep.
I want to say that is probably how it kind of started in the beginning. You want to try something different.
Yeah.
You want to do a little spin on this, right? You want to add something else to this. George R.R. Martin with Game of Thrones added something different to the epic fantasy genre.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Abercrombie added something different to, you want to add something, and it's not just, and it's a representation. It's the human element, right? The different kind of aspects of the nuances of being a person, of being a human being and dealing with extraordinary circumstances. And you want to add different cultures and voices to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that just makes it richer. That makes it all richer.
Well, exactly. And once in a while I'll see somebody online be like, who looks like me, and I'll be like, oh, I looked at this, fill in the blank book or whatever that's not centered on white people, and be like, yeah, it looks cool, but I guess it's not for me. It's like, no, it's all like you get to read it, you get to watch it, what are you talking about?
Right.
And also, can you flip that around? Do you think all the white people stuff, or the stuff that featuring mostly white people, is not for, like, where are you going with this? What's the thought process?
Right.
And just like, the world is bigger and more interesting and more exciting than you are letting it be for yourself.
Yeah.
Go read the thing. Go pick it up.
Right. I mean, I think that's like I want to say a part of, I don't know. I don't know if it's capitalism tradition. I'm not sure where it's coming from. I know earlier on in American history, in part of racism, that had a lot to do with restricting others from joining in a particular thing.
Yeah, just a bit.
Right?
Yeah.
So like country music is only for these people.
Yeah.
Differentiating and closing things off. And you know what? I'll say this: in the 70s, listen to the radio, you can hear everything. Right? You'll be on a station and you'll hear funk, R&B with Led Zeppelin, Steely Dan. When I was growing up, I was exposed to everything from one radio station.
Yeah.
And now it's all become so categorized that, oh, this is this kind of music, this is this kind of music. As a radio station, we only play this, we only play this. And that's a thing that I think really needs to be done away with.
Yep.
Because when we talk about art, everybody is allowed and everybody's invited to be a part of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And the same thing with our genre. Because I just think we've had so many cis male authors doing it. I think a part of it is because of the gatekeepers, the publishing houses that will publish other authors as opposed to somebody else, because this is how they see the genre, right? This will make us money.
Yeah.
This is more of a sell than this is.
This is what I already know and I'm comfortable with. Yeah.
Right. This is who the demographic is, without realizing that, no, your demographic is actually larger than that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was actually amazed, real quick, as a side.
Mm-hmm.
I was so amazed. Do you remember Spartacus on Stars?
I didn't watch much of it, but I'm aware of it. Yeah.
I did not realize there was a discussion chat on their website that was titled "Black Women Who Love Spartacus."
Ah, there you go.
And if you watch Spartacus, you would have, and you would have watched and had no idea that, oh, you actually have like a group of people who you didn't think was part of the demographic. That is. You know what I mean? I had so many people at my job who had no idea that I was into Game of Thrones.
Yeah. No, this is the thing.
Like, you're not the demographic. Yeah. You're not the demographic of Game of Thrones, but I'm in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Huge audience too. What are you talking about? But yeah.
Right.
And it's also this thing of like, not only are these other audiences there, they've always been there. Before we got into recording here, I was talking to you about Iron Circus Comics run by Spike Trotman. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, because comics are her thing, obviously, she'll just drop a photo of like a little black girl reading like Action Comics in 1942 and be like, we've always been here.
Yes.
And it's just, or like I'm dying to try and get in touch. Oh no, I'm losing the first name. Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Salmonson is the last name. Involved in Sword and Sorcery and publishing mostly in those 70s and early 80s. Oh no. I want to say Amanda. Anyway, Oliver, you're dumb, whatever, but hi there, this is future Oliver in the editing room, just letting you know that past Oliver was stumbling and bumbling trying to remember Jessica Amanda Salmonson. Okay, back to in the interview, Oliver. Point being, oh my god, Salmonson, was a trans woman.
Oh, okay.
Still is. Right. Involved in the Sword and Sorcery scene, publishing, writing, and out and proud about it in the mid to late 70s, when it was a little trickier. Not that it's easy now. Right. And I just think it's this kind of thing of like, it's, they've always been there. Mm-hmm. By they, I mean everybody who isn't, frankly, my demographic.
Right.
And so it's this kind of thing. And it makes them so much richer. And this thing of like, white guy being like, oh, I don't know, that doesn't look like it's for me. It's like, well, let's take the biggest, easiest example from the last few years, Black Panther, right? The movie.
Yeah.
And like, I went in and sat down that movie, and I just remember once or twice in the movie looking up and seeing, you know, not Martin Freeman, you know, or whatever. The scene did not have him in it, you know,
right.
And just being kind of like, and it just kind of hit me. I was just like, this is refreshing. Because that's nice. It's kind of breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not about me being a good person because I thought that or any nonsense. You know, that doesn't make you a good person watching a movie.
You're a storyteller. You're a storyteller. You enjoy stories. You want to hear, you want to see different stories. I mean, I didn't realize that there was actually like a large Korean historical dramas.
Yeah.
Those are a big, and when I saw my first was like Age of Heroes, I was blown away. It was like, and I was telling everybody and found out that I had like, there are cousins of mine and people that I know who are into it as well. And, you know, these are all Black women. Cause it was soap opera and martial arts. And, you know, and who doesn't love those? And you had, you know, you'd be surprised on, you know, you tell a good story and the people will come.
Yeah. So, you know, what can I say? Yes. We could talk forever about this, I think, because I think we both have very strong feelings. We can sort of agree real hard on this. And yeah, like something I've said on here more than once is just like, I'm dying to read stories by these audiences you don't hear about as much.
Yeah.
More so. Again, not to say that like it's a bit, you know, I'm inventing this idea, not to say that nobody has done it before. Like I say, you know, by the they, I mean the not me's have been around, you know, the whole time, but I want to see more, you know, I want to see more. And, and just, it's exciting because it's just like, it's expanding the thing. It's not subdividing it. It's not taking away precious, you know, white male real estate, you know, it makes the thing bigger, bolder, and more beautiful. And it's a genre that is just, you know, has this sense of, Howard Andrew Jones uses this, as part of his describing the genre. You know, it can, I'm going to bugger the phrasing, but you know, I don't know what's wrong with me today. But yeah, it's just like reestablishing the wonder, re-wondering, rewilding, bringing wonder, and that wonder can mean, you know, even if it's like a dark and terrible place your character's going through, it's like a big and mysterious dark and terrible place. You know, but also positive stuff as well, and that can be landscapes, which I think is, you know, and environments, peoples and cultures, and also it can be creators. You know, and so it's like just it makes everything better. You know. Anyway, whatever. In the
immortal words of Fela, wonderful mint.
Oh my God, we should talk about Fela a little bit after this, but yeah. Man, that's Fela Kuti. By the way, everybody, a musician, you should check him out. But yeah, it's stiff competition. All right, let's get the last question here. Stiff competition, but I think. Cock and Bull, that's the third story, listener, is my favorite story in the collection. Oh, do you have any more plans for those characters or anybody from the other three stories? You know,
oh my God. Yes, we do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I was actually starting a novel featuring them, doing some wild and wacky things in the continent of Gabar. I'll just say this. So I have been influenced by Shaft, the blaxploitation movie from the 70s, as part of the story.
Interesting.
So, princess gets kidnapped, and it is up to these ne'er-do-wells to rescue her for the dad. And I'll leave it at that.
That's awesome.
That was something I was playing with, yes.
In the author bio, you mentioned you're working on a new Sword and Soul novel. Is that it?
Yes, that was it. Actually, there's two of them. Because I love blaxploitation movies and I love Shakespeare. And I feel as artists, we are allowed to use elements and rework them and remix them and remaster them in other ways that we can, you know, be able to play with. It's part of the wonderfulness of the genre.
Yeah.
So, you know, Macbeth as a sword and sorcery tale.
Oh, yeah.
That's something I'm playing with. Shaft, the idea of Shaft as a sort of sorcery tale. You know what I mean? These are, I mean, we're working in a genre where we get to use ne'er-do-wells and people forgotten as heroes. So why not? We can do, you know, Westerns, blaxploitation stories, gangster stories, the whole shebang. Just play with it. So those are something I'm playing with, yes.
And that goes right back to Howard, right? Who, you know, I've said this before as well. Sorry, listener, but you know, he drapes the genre of sword and sorcery over other pulp genres from his day. You've got Lockford Mystery, you've definitely got pirate stories, and so on and so forth. Definitely Western frontier stuff, the Black River story. Yeah, absolutely.
Horror stories. Yeah,
there you go. All right. I feel like we could talk all day, and I would love to chat with you a little while after we press stop, because I want to talk to you about what I think is the most Shakespearean blaxploitation film. Actually, listen, I'll drop the title. Just see if you agree with me. Across 110th Street.
Nice. Yes. That. Yeah. You know what? Yes. That. Yeah. You know what? That was, yes, better produced and absolutely one of the better Shakespearean tales in terms of your two protagonists. No, your three protagonists, I want to say, because Anthony Quinn, Yaphet Kotto's character, and I can't remember the actor who played the thief, the robber, and his people.
He was great. God, I should look his name up again.
My God. And
even the aging mobster, he kind of felt like a little Shakespearean to me in the sense that like he's got the role because of family, but it's he's not the most successful member of the family,
right?
And
he has to prove himself. I 100% agree. Yes.
Yeah. Cheers. All right. Well, okay. So we did fit that in the recording. There we go, listener.
That was it.
So I think we got into the project side of things. Do you have any maybe you can mention the podcast again? Like, do you have any other projects you'd like people to know about? And if people want to find you online, where's the best place to find you?
Okay. Let me start with projects then. I'm working with two other authors, Mark L. Abbott and Stephen Van Patten. Stephen Van Patten is already well known within the horror circles. He's part of the Horror Writers Association with Brookwater's Curse, vampire novel. Beginning in the during the antebellum slavery era. Mm. And I've always told him, he knows this, and I told him I loved it because it reads kind of like Blade meets blaxploitation meets Anne Rice. But it has a lot of action adventure involved in it, and it's great. And his Killer Genius series, and we worked on a project together on a book called Hell in Brooklyn T, which as Mark like to put it, it's like those old Hammer anthologies where you have one story, and within the story you have these other separate tales being told by the characters.
Yeah.
And then we have it like that. That's Hell at Brooklyn T, which I'm a part of, and Hell at the Way Station. And the Way Station, which is the beginning, which was a bar in Brooklyn that catered to it themed sci-fi fantasy genre. There was like a TARDIS as the bathroom. It was awesome. It was awesome. So that's something I'm working on. That's the podcast I'm on. And to find me, you can find me on Facebook at Two Lands Far Field, where sword and sorcery and cosmic horror tread. I want to say that, right? Cosmic horror, sword and soul. But you can find me on Facebook, Kirk A. Johnson. Instagram, Farfield Press. That's me. I love that logo, the Farfield Press. And Kirk A. Johnson also. And on Twitter, Kirk A. Johnson at Farfield Press. So Farfield Press is the label. Yeah.
I will put all those links in the show notes, listeners. So, if you're like, I can get a pen. Yeah, it's cool. Just go down in the show notes. You can click on anything, get anything. All right, Kirk, I had a real great time. I'm very happy I had you on the show.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
Let's talk some more.
I loved it. Yeah, I'm so happy you, man. I'm so honored, man, you put me on. I've been listening to your podcast for some time, and it was like, you have just the nicest voice. It's
Cheers.
Such a nice voice.
Well, there's software that helps with that.
Oh man, it's so awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and thank you, listeners. Yeah.
Go buy the book. I'll put the link, and that's the first link. Take care, man.
Remember, it's all about the fans.
So I'm Writing a Novel features original intro and outro music by Gloria Guns and is hosted by yours truly, Oliver Brackenbury. If you'd like to submit a question, then please email it to soimwritinganovel@gmail.com. You can also holler at the show on Twitter. Look for @SoWriting. That's @so_writing. Please consider sharing the show with anybody who might like it, or checking out any of the other ways you can support the show by heading to soimwritinganovel.com/support the show, which has things like links to our Patreon, Coffee, and PayPal. Thanks for hanging out with me and Kirk, and I'll see you soon.